Today we're here to talk about how Microsoft is sunsetting Project Online, which is a very nice way of saying that they are quietly going to turn it off on the 30th of September. And we're really going to talk about what that means for you and your organizations, and obviously what you need to do today. So I'm Chris Pond from TPG, the project group. So I'm going to be leading the presentation today. And we have Asif Sharif from LoadSpring, who will be joining us, and you can see on the screen there, and he'll be jumping in at a couple of points to talk about how LoadSpring and TPG together can really help organizations to deal with the impact of this change on their organizations and really give them options for how you might want to be able to move forward. So without further ado, let's kick off. So today we're going to talk about the retirement timeline. We're going to talk about, there's a number of things that have already happened. There's something that's about to happen, and then obviously you've got the 30th of September. We'll talk about what it means for you and your project teams. We'll give you some insights into kind of what Microsoft spoke about in terms of available paths and my opinion about that. We will also talk about the migration approach and timing, because of course this isn't just about, hey, I need a new system, I need to move from Project Online to Project Server, for example. It's also about data migration. It's about how your organization deals with that change and how this approach can really actually reduce risk to your business and give you that continuity. We'll then finish off with execution and next steps, and there's Q&A. So if you do have any questions as we go through today, in the GoToWebinar area, there is a chat window and you can put items in there, and there's also the questions area. So I'm not sure why they give us chat and questions, but we do get both options. All right, so we'll come to those at the end of the session. So today, Project Online retirement, let's look at those dates. So this kind of happened early September, and actually very quickly, October 2025, Microsoft already stopped people adding new Project Online licenses. So if you already had a tenant but didn't have Project Online in it, you can add that. So you've not been able to make that change since then. Now, something you may have seen, and we've certainly run webinars about this, is April 2026, SharePoint 2013 workflows will stop working in SharePoint Online. So that not only impacts the workflows in SharePoint, it also impacts the Project Online project lifecycle workflows. So just something to be aware of. Yeah, if you haven't done anything about that, talk to us. Let's see what we can do to help you with that. But that is coming on April the 1st or 2nd, depending, I guess, on where you sit on the date line. That is almost upon us. And then on the 30th of September, Project Online and Project Web App comes to an end. So yeah, in fact, we are talking about holding a party about that for a lot of the previous people who've worked on projects in the past. So certainly, Asif, I'll let you know about that. We're going to be holding something in London, a kind of get together for people to just kind of reminisce and talk about the future. Like I said earlier, we're going to provide these slides and video. There's a link to some resources from Microsoft about why Project Online is retiring and what you can do. So there's some very interesting items if you look down in the gossip afterwards. So what does this mean for you? What are the risks, right? That's the core thing here. So people have said to me, oh, it won't happen. They'll bring it back, and it's like, no, it's definitely going. I'm on monthly calls with Microsoft about this, about partners and about customers, and it is going away. So just let's be very clear about that. It's not only Project Web App that's going away and the Project Online side of things, it's the SharePoint sites associated with it. So if you've used the SharePoint sites that are created when you create a project, and you're storing documents and content, and you're using the risk and issue lists and whatever else that you might put in there for collaboration, that is also going away. So when you think about what changes you need to make, it's not only that you need to do migrate project online data, there's also that SharePoint data. And again, we have some customers who have decided to leave the SharePoint Online content in SharePoint Online, but just move it to a different site because it's going to go away. And like I've already mentioned, that workflow and automation and approval processes will go away. And we'll kind of talk about how, for Project Online, it's a central tool for PMOs and program and portfolio management. But often a lot of people don't kind of realize how it's the glue for a lot of items, a lot of systems, how they interact and integrate with the likes of SAP or other project management tool sets. So, there's a lot to think about in terms of the impact on your organizations. And of course, we have these solutions. We put all of our projects in there, we look at our resources, and we get our executive reporting out of it. So, think about these 4 items very, very clearly. How am I going to manage my projects? What am I going to do about any integration? What happens about workflow? And what about those integrations between, say, Project Online and the likes of SAP for finance? So we see lots of customers having integrations, having data moving backwards and forwards, and there's a real impact there. Now, there is limited time. 30th of September, it's not very far away. It's what, 7 months? I did have it written down somewhere about how many days it is and how many weeks and months. It's going to be here very, very soon, and we'll talk later about when you need to get things done. But as you'll hear from us today, it's really about today. So what platform are you going to move to? What options are there to migrate your data? Yeah. And again, infrastructure. Now, we're really talking today about how organizations can move from using Project Online to going to Project Server Subscription Edition. Now, why would you do that? Well, it's a very straightforward, as straightforward as these things can be, way to go from Project Online to Project Server. The data models are the same. The user experience is pretty much 99% the same. But from an infrastructure perspective, that's why we work with LoadSpring, because they absolutely understand infrastructure. There's so much, they are not just a hosting organization, and Asif's going to talk about that a bit later. But a lot of people have lost the knowledge about how to look after servers and SharePoint and what have you. And that's where, together, LoadSpring and TPG will really be able to help you mitigate risk and make sure that you meet the deadlines that you're going to look at. Okay. All right. So Microsoft, when they mentioned this in September, they came with some options, and we're going to talk about those briefly. Now, in Microsoft 365, you get something called Planner. That's just really for task management. Doesn't do anything particularly more than that. It's included in Microsoft 365. And then if you want to do a bit more with task management, you can buy Planner, Plan 1 or Plan 3 or Plan 5. Far fewer capabilities than you get with Microsoft Desktop, and doesn't give you the capabilities like a central resource pool in the same way, timesheets, forecasting, the workflow capabilities. It doesn't give you, the costs and everything that everyone's been used to in Project Desktop. And I know everyone has an opinion about Project Desktop, right? I've been using it since the mid-90s. I've supported people with it, trained people in it, and to this day, from a desktop, 80% of what people need and 80% of the 80% people need, it far outweighs most other tools, right? So, and again, at TPG and at LoadSpring, we work with other tools as well, like Primavera P6. A lot of our aerospace and defense customers use that, and we integrate with them, we work together, and we use the right tool for the right people. So again, something to be aware of. Microsoft also talk about Dynamics 365 project operations, which you may or may not be aware of, but basically it's Planner with some Dynamics 365 around it. It's really for service automation projects, as it says there. And if you don't have Dynamics already, it kind of starts from about 120 euros per user per month. Now, It is a little bit less expensive if you already have some Dynamics, but again, it's just giving you Planner with some bits and pieces on the side. It's really not around project and portfolio management and dealing with tens of thousands of tasks. So with that in mind, we are, and here at TPG and LoadSpring, we're working with quite a good number of customers who are moving from Project Online to Project Server because of that identical functionality. Because also, by the way, if you've got Microsoft E3 and E5 licenses, it does provide some coverage for some of your licenses. So again, there's a lot of detail around here, and as Asif and I have spoken on many times, we do have some details we'll send you afterwards, which is less Microsoft speak and more what you would understand. Okay, so we'll talk about that. But yeah, so there is a way that you can continue to have Project Online capabilities. You can still do your integration. You can have the same user experience, and you can have it in an environment that is managed and is available to you whenever you need it from wherever you are. And again, we'll talk around data locations and the like in a few moments. So Project Server Subscription Edition, let's just talk about this very briefly. So there is a licensing requirement. Project Server is built on SharePoint Server Enterprise Subscription Edition, got that the wrong way around. So again, if you want to use it, you need to build up that environment, and I'll show you that in a moment. You can then use that with Project Desktop, obviously. So do all the things that you've ever done in the Project Desktop. Keep using your plans, have the central resource pool, and again, you can continue to use your Planner with Project Plan 3 or 5 licenses, because that also gives you the right to connect to Project Server. So again, just some ways to reduce your costs or not add to them. And then again, you've got your client access licenses. So for customers who are using timesheets, for example, or just have some team member access, then you've got a couple of options. You can use Planner Plan 1, that gives you that right. And also you can use a Project Server CAL or client access license. But again, there's this is where we can really help you very quickly get to an answer, which is how much is this going to cost me, and what does that kind of 1, 2, 3 year cost look like in terms of licensing and also the infrastructure side of things. Okay, so the Project Server architecture, this is just an example one. Okay, so this is based on a customer we've already deployed to. So we have production environment and a UAT. In this occasion, we've kept them the same. That allows us to make sure that when we're making changes, when we're looking at new reports or new integrations, we can be confident that the changes we make in UAT will be performant when we get them to production. Now, you don't have to do that. It's just a risk if you have a smaller environment for the likes of UAT. And in fact, as Asif and I were speaking recently, some customers have 3 environments, right? They kind of go from test to UAT to production, and people use different terms. But again, this gives you an idea of what is required. So Webfront Ironed, which gives you access to Project Web App and the like. We then separate out the app server so that we're looking at things like potentially redundancy, but also just making sure we get the performance right, and then your SQL Server in the back end to connect to. Now, there is one change, by the way, between Project Online and Project Server, and that is the fact that Project Server does not give you the OData feeds for reporting that a lot of customers used in the past. Not a big problem. It just means that you need to talk directly to the SQL Server to get your reports out. So there's a piece of work that may be required there, depending on what you are up to. All right, migration approach and timing. No.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Nice to see you all. Well, not so nice to see you all, but I'm glad you're all with us today. So I'm going to talk to you briefly about the migration approach and timing and the options and recommendations that we've got. If you can move to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
A structured migration approach is really, really important. The real risk with Project Online Retirement is poor managed migration, actually, because the difference between online and server is actually quite minimal. So the ability to migrate them is going to be really, really key. And that's the risk that we want to try and address today. So working with LoadSpring and TPG provides an end-to-end migration support from validation through to production cutover. And we can stand environments up in significantly shorter timeframes than most internal organizations can, because obviously you've got the option to do this yourself. So a DIY approach is absolutely available to you, but you probably need to have those resources available with the expertise at the time you need them. As customers, you can complete testing and migration well ahead of the Microsoft's deadline. So that enables you to make sure that everything is done before that end date of the 30th of September. And one important thing about the platform is that it provides a future-proof, flexible environment and the opportunity to reset. What we've uncovered, having discussed this with a number of customers, is that actually when they're using Project Online, it tends to be quite sporadic, and it's done in very different ways in different teams, in different departments, in different regions. And actually the requirement to have a more standardized, more consistent approach is really important. So moving to a clean gold standard environment becomes much easier when you're migrating to a platform like LoadSpring. And finally, in addition to that, as Chris mentioned, there's a whole suite of applications that you can add to your environment. So from a scheduling point of view, we can manage Microsoft, but we can also manage Oracle P6, but we can manage risk tools, cost tools, etc. So there's over 250 different applications that you can start to use within the platform. Just move to the next slide, please, Chris. Chris is my demo dolly for the afternoon. So Project Online Retirement doesn't mean you have to abandon Project Server. And I think that's really important. A number of discussions, again, we've both had with customers that are going, well, do we have to move? And should we be looking for a brand new system? The answer is no, you don't have to move. So you can move from Project Online to Project Service by working with us and do that very efficiently. And actually moving to another tool now would probably impose quite a lot of risk to you as an organization, and more importantly to your projects that are in flight, because actually you've got 5 months to probably select, to test, to then deploy, and then migrate your data onto a new system and ensure it's working. So we don't think that's probably the most appropriate approach at the moment. We enable organizations to keep running Project Server securely and compliantly without building or managing the infrastructure. So from a timeline perspective, we would probably start planning a consultation exercise with you immediately. So from March onwards, where we're defining scope, users, and data. By May, we'd be moving to a test environment setup within the LoadSpring platform. So we'd create a sandbox environment, which would have a copy of your data, so it's have some test data in it, and Microsoft Server and all the other tech that's required, so that you can actually test for a month or so, make sure that you're comfortable. From that, in June, we'd probably move to a migration and validation phase where we're executing and verifying the data transfer process, as Chris alluded to, with a view that by August 2026, you can start decommissioning legacy systems like Online and go to a full production cutover to Project Server within the LoadSpring platform. So that gives you at least a month to make sure everything's running before Microsoft pull the plug, so to speak. If you can move to the next slide, Chris.
We're all ready. Blimey. Okay, so thank you very much for that, Asif. So he'll be back in a moment. So at TPG, the project group, just want to talk about us very, very briefly. Obviously, you can find out all about us online and look at the type of customers that we've worked with over the years. I always think that what's most important are the customers we've worked with in the last few months or years, really, because they're the ones that, although we have customers of like 10 years or more, at the end of the day, you know, do people continue to trust us? And yes, they do. And you can see the types of integrations and work that we've done. So headquarters in HQ, we have people in the UK and Ireland, people in Austria, Switzerland, MEA, and again, into Canada and into the Americas all up. So we do lots of work with customers around integration. We help them with the adoption and change side of things when it comes to tool sets, yeah, something like 5,000 plus customers, ranging from 10 people to tens of thousands using these kind of systems. So that's really us about TPG, the project group, and we're really proud to be working with LoadSpring.
Great, thanks, Chris. We move to the next one. So I'm going to give you a little bit about LoadSpring. So we were founded in 1999, so virtually the same age as TPG. Chris is obviously a little bit older than I am. We're a global organization, offices and operational units in the USA and the UK, and we have staff in the USA, UK, and Australia. As an organization, we service sort of global, complex and capital intensive projects and industries. So if you think about engineering, construction, and think about mega programs, things like HS2, light rail projects in California and Malaysia, pharmaceutical programs globally. Those are the sort of programs of work that we typically are involved with. That's not to say we only work with large organizations, because there's a whole host of companies that work on these projects, from the primes, who are the major sort of big organizations globally, through to subcontractors and consultants and general contractors, but whole range of different industries that we work in, from government, pharma, manufacturing, energy, utilities, etc. There's probably about 5,000 plus companies using our platform on a regular basis, and we have over 100,000 global users. And from a sort of capital value perspective, we're managing over $1 trillion worth of project value at any one time. So there are lots of people using us. Again, you can find out more about who we are at loadspring.com. And you can see some of the testimonials that we have from our customers. Many of our customers have worked with us for over 20 years. So, keeping customers at the center of what we do is really important, and making sure that we deliver a really strong service to them is critical. If you can move to the next one, please, Chris. So just to give you an example of sort of the brands that we're working with, and again, this is not to brag, it's just to indicate the sort of sectors and verticals that we're working with. So we work in engineering, energy, etc. So we work with a lot of these sort of very large household names, but we also, as I said, work with the consultants, contractors and subcontractors and the suppliers that service these organizations. So this is not to imply that we can't work with any size of organization. If you've got a challenge of managing project online and you're looking for a solution, we're absolutely happy to talk to you with TPG and discuss how we can support you, whether you're the same size as Lily or Coach or Coke or not. We can move to the next slide. What I wanted to now talk about is the operating Microsoft Server securely and at scale. What's really clear is that this is a forcing event, but the real decision is how Project Server is run going forward. Because what's clear is that it requires specialist operational expertise. Now, as organizations, you may have that internally, but as you'll know, resources internally are typically highly utilized on projects consistently. So having a team suddenly move from one project to now be working on helping you operate Microsoft Project Server in the next 4 months and manage that migration is probably a challenge if it hasn't been already pre-planned. So with our joint approach and working with TPG, LoadSpring and TPG can provide a sort of one-stop shop service. TPG provides the subject matter expertise, consultancy, and application support on all things Microsoft Server and the associated ways of moving the data. LoadSpring is a managed platform purpose-built for enterprise project applications. And I sort of stress that because we're not a generic cloud hosting company, and that's really important. We have over 25 years of deep knowledge and expertise of running very complex applications for global organizations on very large, complex programs of work. And these applications range from scheduling tools like Microsoft Server and P6 all the way through to geospatial tools like Esri and cost platforms like Ecosys. So essentially, our team will take responsibility for the security, for the performance, for the governance, the migration and the availability of this platform for your users and the data being available within it. We can move to the next one, Chris. Identity, governance, and operational resilience. So for regulated industries, this level of assurance isn't optional, it's absolutely essential, right? So thinking about those really highly regulated types of sectors, but actually you might say, well, we're not in that sector, but actually it's still business critical for you to have Project Online migrated to another system, or indeed Project Server, as effectively and efficiently and at the lowest risk as possible. So we're effectively the organizations that can help you do that. From a LoadSpring perspective, we take full tech responsibility of the infrastructure stack. So think about Project Server, SQL licenses, SharePoint, Windows, that's all our responsibility. We deliver via a network of secure cloud architectural environments, right? So every hosting environment is SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. We're ISO 27001. As an organization, we're Cyber Essentials Plus. And to add additional security and governance to the platform, we can add multi-factor authentication, MFA, to the platform. So users not only have to have a URL and a username and password, but they go through a secondary authentication process before they're let into the environments. From a hosting perspective, again, dealing with the sort of projects and organizations that we deal with, often data has to sit within a particular geographic region, right? So data sovereignty requirements can be quite important. So we have hosting environments provided by GCP and Azure in the UK, in Europe, North America, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Japan, and Australia. From an availability point of view, our standard is 99.9% uptime. That can be further increased upon discussion with us, and we have a defined RPO and RTO as well, which is available as standard, but again, these can be customized to your requirements. If that is not, what with 99.9% is not enough, we can give you 99.99% availability. And finally, from a support perspective, we provide 24/7 support for infrastructure. So we're proactively managing and monitoring the infrastructure all the time. So any user that you have given access to your LoadSpring environment can have access to our help desk and will be eligible for this sort of support. And then we also do troubleshooting and application support in conjunction with TPG. If we move to the next one, please. So we're nearly at the end. So what does this mean for your organization? So to conclude, I think Project Online Retirement doesn't force you to move away from Project Server. And again, a lot of companies that Chris and I have been speaking to over the last few months have been saying, right, well, we've got to find an alternative. It's not about finding alternatives, because if you haven't started that process probably 8-9 months ago, it's probably too late. Because thinking about all the historical data that you've got in Project Online, all the current projects in flight that you've got on Project Online, your user communities, the amount of data that you've got, to find a new alternative solution, validate it, test it, deploy it, migrate your data, and then run your projects and hope that the projects in flight on Project Online will automatically and seamlessly integrate with this new system is probably unrealistic. With most scheduling technologies, they're usually 90% different. So the difference between Microsoft Project and P6, for instance, is 90% different. There's only 10% similarity in the way that those systems work from a data table level. So we've got to be very careful about how that migration happens and what sort of tools that you use. So LoadSpring and TPG together can allow organizations to achieve secure, compliant, and predictable operations. So we can continue to run your projects with the lowest level of risk and move from Project Online to Project Server. As organizations, there is no infrastructure build or operational burden that you or your teams have to take on board. That's the responsibility of us, and specifically on LoadSpring. Working with TPG, we will have a seamless transition to a new managed environment, right? So we'll work with you from a consulting point of view and a planning point of view during the deployment to ensure that we understand where your data is, form of that data, how much data, how we migrate the data from online to server, and then we'll provide the environment within which you will then access it, which is simply a new URL. You have a LoadSpring URL with a username and password. You click onto that URL, and based on your credentials, you'll have access to your projects and your data. And all of this is in alignment with the retirement timeline. So what we've tried to outline today is that by starting now, you will be assured to be in a position by the end of August where you're comfortable that everything's working, it's tested, and you're running Project Server, migrated all of the projects out of Project Online, and you've still got 30 days before Microsoft pull the plug. Chris, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And as you can see from, or hear from what Asif said, this is why we work together, because these guys really know what they're talking about in terms of the infrastructure and project and portfolio management. So, you know, the next steps for you and for us is that we start by assessing your current Project Online environment. What have you got? How many tasks? How many projects? Scope, scale of those, not scope, sorry, scale of those projects. What data have you got within the SharePoint sites? What integrations have you got? What about project reporting? So we can very quickly then understand what that scope is and actually start to work through the plans that we already have and we've already done with other customers and really accelerate getting you onto that new platform. So there'll be project management and project managers assigned to you to put that schedule together, work with you, and actually get it moving. So the infrastructure part, in some ways, is the simplest bit, right? It's there. The bit that takes more time is you've got data in one place, you need to get it to another place. So that's the bit that really needs the time in some respects. And again, just to give you an example, we've got some customers who have decided to leave SharePoint data or SharePoint Online data in SharePoint Online and just move it to an area that's not going to be deleted, but use Project Server for all the scheduling and resource management capabilities that it provides and do it that way. So we could do that online with you. We have a set of questionnaires that we can provide to you that, so we really use your time in a very, very structured way and get the information that we need so that we can very quickly say to you, yes, this is what we're going to be able to do for you, and this is how it would work. So again, it doesn't have to take lots of time, and that's a great thing about this. You can get started in the next day or so. So questions and discussions. So let me just have a look here. Asif, this is the classic kind of question. I know you kind of touched on it, but it was more around kind of data residency, because certainly in the UK, as you know, we kind of get a bit squeamish about where our zeros and ones are held. What can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so we take data sovereignty really important. I mean, obviously, based on the sort of programs and projects that we're involved with, they're usually related to critical government infrastructure. So it's really important whether you're dealing with a Canadian company or a US company or a UK company or a company in Saudi Arabia, that you keep the primary and secondary data centers within region. So all of our data centers have both primary and secondary backups in country. So no data leaves the UK. So our UK customers are all hosted in the UK. European customers are all hosted in Germany. We've had hosting in Saudi Arabia for over 3 years, and all the programs of work that we're doing there, it's actually a government requirement there to have all data in country. So I hope that answers the question.
No, that's great. Yeah, so thank you very much for that. So was there anything else? I think it looks like we've done a really good job, because yeah, I don't have any more questions. Did you have anything? Yeah,
I've got one. Can you just give the audience a bit of an idea of how we at TPG at the moment helping organizations with their existing Project Online estate? What sort of work are you doing, and what sort of processes and procedures putting in place to move them to server?
It's been really interesting. Obviously, a lot's happened since September. One of the biggest challenges customers have had, certainly in the public sector, is procurement. because, you know, procurement doesn't run quite as quickly as everyone else would maybe like to run, and we understand why that is. So we've been able to help customers really cut through kind of the noise and say, look, this is why this needs to happen, and what needs to happen. And it's really helped our customers be able to move much more quickly, because we've given confidence to their procurement teams, for example, that we are, you know, not trying to cheat the system, we're trying to do it in the right way, and really work with them. So that's one side of things. The other side then is the need to move data. And of course, this is a really, and you mentioned this earlier actually, which was, you know, you've got all of this data, how much of it do you actually need? And is this a great moment where you can actually look at, we've always done it this way, but is this a time to maybe make some small changes? Now, we're not saying wholesale changes of process and ways of working, obviously, but, you know, a lot of customers will have thousands of projects, but actually they just keep them in there for no particular reason. You know, they don't actually have a reason to do it for you know, governmental reasons or anything like that. So again, there are ways that we can help speed up the execution of the migration by removing some of the data. Now, that doesn't mean we're just deleting it, but we can just move it to a database, for example, rather than having to move it and then reintegrate it. So that's how we've helped customers really focus on what is it that they need from this, and how that, you know, we can actually help them save money by not having to move everything that they've had for several years. One example would be, got a customer, they had over 5 terabytes of data in their SharePoint sites. They had so much content. So actually, there's no point in bringing that back down onto like an Azure server. So they've just kept that in the cloud, but it saved a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of kind of having to deal with reconnecting that data afterwards. And we have tooling that we use to do this as well. So there are specific tools that we use to help migrate. They really allow us to speed up, not just moving the data, but moving configuration. And again, it's a tool that you can continue to use post-migration to keep and refresh your data and configuration between your UAT, for example, and your servers. So yeah, hopefully that gave you an idea of what we've been up to.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you mentioned 2 really important points there. You know, reporting is really is becoming more and more of a challenge for organizations because of the way that we set up projects. The more unique our projects are, the more difficult it is to report across groups of projects, right? So this ability to have some degree of standardization, it's not saying that you need to be standardized 100%, but having levels of standardization and commonality between your structures means that you're reporting better. And the second point was about data, because, you know, we're in the advent of AI. It's all over us, and actually a lot of companies are failing with AI initiatives because the data isn't structured, isn't clean, isn't correct, isn't, you know, relevant. And actually that's really, really important for organizations to understand that we're on the precipice of really changing the way we operate as organizations. The data that feeds the models and the technology that we're going to use going forward really needs to be cleaned and be structured in a way that we can reuse it. And I think this gives the opportunity for that to happen as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, sometimes this change is needed, right? Because otherwise we'd have just sat there doing the same thing. And
yeah,
you know, there's lots of talk at the moment around agentic AI and how that's going to help out. And you know, the key thing here, and I was chatting to someone the other day about this, there is still a place for a Gantt chart. There's agile is a way of working with a capital A, by the way, not a lowercase a. But again, all of these things come together and allow the project and portfolio management community to kind of change in a way that really adds to what we deliver to our customers. And again, you know, that's why we're working with LoadSpring. They have some of this great technology already in place, and again, Asif and his team can show you that another time. But again, you know, keep an eye. There'll be other webinars coming along. So I think from my perspective, I think this was the last slide, actually, if I'm correct.
Yeah. There's one more, just with our details on it.
Oh, yes, we did. Yeah, correct. The classic, who we are and how to get in contact with us. I mean, Asif, I don't know if you want to have a last word before we kind of sign off.
I mean, only to say, look, the big message from our point of view is that this is a process that could add significant risk to your business and your projects. We want to try and alleviate that risk, because coming to TPG and LoadSpring will allow you to mitigate the risk as low as you can. We are tried and tested companies in this space for many, many years, have done it for lots of customers, and we'd be delighted to support you.
Yeah, so I'd like to say thank you to Asif and his team for helping us pull this together. It's been great. Pleasure. And yeah, we look forward to work with you. The main thing for everyone out there is don't delay. You know, it's time to pull the ripcord. Let's get something done. So we'll make this available to you afterwards. If you have any questions, please contact either of us, and we'll work with you to get you to the right place. But otherwise, I wish you a great day, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.